Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be doing my paper on the fifth wave of terrorism, which we're currently in. And instead of being like other waves of terrorism, it's not going to be coming from a minority or a underrepresented group. It's actually going to be coming from the majority of Western societies. So white Christians are going to be the one propagating the next wave of terrorism. And it's not for social justice, it's to keep their dominance of influence. I'll be using the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, and this will be the best possible resource to illustrate how hate crimes are on the rise, especially from white Christians. It shows who the victims and who the perpetrators are, and how terrorism is rising within those groups. Second part is I'm going to use the rise of far-right extremism in the United States. This shows how over the last 10 years, so 2007 to 2017, in the United States and in Western Europe, right-wing groups have become much more violent than they have in the past, and this trend is accelerating. Third, we're going to use the PASM Right, assessing the threat of weapons of mass destruction terrorism from America's Christian patriots. Through the 1990s, American Christian Patriot movement was the terrorist movement that everyone was afraid of. So up until September 11th, they were causing all the terrorism in the majority of the terrorism in the United States. After September 11th, that all changed. Everyone hated Muslims and Arabs and were fearful of them, but the Christian Patriot movement did not subside. And as more and more farms keep being foreclosed on, as happened in the 80s, that gave this movement a lot of their personnel, this trend could start up again, and with greater ferocity because of access to more destructive weapons. Next, I'm going to show how the explaining right-wing terrorism and violence in Western Europe, grievances, opportunities, and polarization. This shows how a combination of a lack of opportunities and suppression of right-wing influence has led to more violence. It doesn't exactly go into terrorism, but it shows how if those issues are not addressed by countries, they tend to have violent outcomes. Then I'm using religion and terrorism, Christian fundamentalism, and extremism. This shows how Christianity has a tendency to be violent. It's not just Islam that has a tendency to be violent. It shows how Christians, the dominant faith in the United States, could be mobilized to use extreme methods to get what they want, so there'll be more influence. I'm going to be using a book, Religion and Terrorism, the Use of Violence in Abrahamic Faiths. This is really, really important for this. It shows how all Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, have used violence in the past, and really, really illustrates how not only Islam is the one to be fearful as far as their history of using violence. Another one is White Boys to Terrorist Men, Target Recruitment of Nazi Skinheads. Now, they are a very small group, so they have a much, much better recruiting strategy, and they're better organized. So if they become more active, that could be dangerous, because as America becomes more homogenous, recruiters can use this as there's less white dominance, so that's why there's less opportunities, there's less safety for white people, and they will use that as a recruiting tool, and then this can be propagated into violence. Lastly, I'm going to be using historical events and spaces of hate crimes against Arabs and Muslims, just to illustrate how before 2001, Arab immigrants were very, very few victims of hate crimes, but afterwards they shot up dramatically. And this actually shows how a lot of these Arabs and Muslims are not the causes of violence and terrorism. So yeah, look forward to looking at everybody else's video. Have a great weekend.